Hello! In this clip on showing recognition and motivating each other, I'll speak about the powerful benefits of giving recognition. I'll introduce Appreciative Inquiry technique. I'll bring you through a model that identifies the properties of effective feedback. I'll speak about a framework that you can bring someone through when providing effective feedback. And I'll introduce the concept of feedforward in your dialogue. And first, why give praise and recognition? It increases positive emotion and morale. It raises productivity. It strengthens relationships. It lowers staff turnover. It motivates people. It reinforces positive behavior. It builds confidence and self-esteem. It's related to higher customer satisfaction. It increases engagement, and it even improves health and helps you to live longer. And there are many benefits to managers as well that offer praise and recognition. Managers that are considered to be effective at recognizing their employees have lower staff turnover rates than other managers, achieve better organizational results, are seen to be much stronger in goal setting, communication, trust, and accountability, have teams with greater morale, are more respected and admired by their peers, and have teams that are more motivated to work harder and are more willing to go out of their way to help their peers or support their organization. Now I'll introduce you to Appreciative Inquiry technique. We all know that listening is a most important skill, but questioning is where the shift is. A powerful question is one that resonates and shifts someone else's thinking. For example, someone could come to you and they could tell you about how awful things are at the moment in a certain circumstance, and you could ask them more about it and bring them into a spiral by keep talking and talking about it. Or you could ask them about what's working well, what are they doing well, to shift their thinking and get their focus different and raise their energy. So when we change our questions, we change our answers, and our focus changes too. Appreciative inquiry is a dialogue and questioning that demonstrates the appreciation for the positive and what's working. Within every person and every team, something works, and it's about finding out the best of what is and identifying and using strengths. And it operates under the premise that if we bring parts of the past forward, they should be the best parts of the past. They found that operating like this is proven to increase positive emotion and performance. So a brief background into Appreciative Inquiry, also known as AI. It was developed by David Cooper-Ryder and Suresh Srivastava in the 1980s. The approach is based on the premise that organizations change in the direction in which they inquire. And an organization which inquires into problems will keep finding problems, but an organization which attempts to appreciate what is best in itself will discover more and more that is good. And it's the same for people. When we inquire into problems, we keep finding problems, and when we attempt to appreciate the best in ourselves, we discover more and more of what is good too. So there are 4 key characteristics to the AI approach. So questions should be appreciative, because when we learn to appreciate the best of what is, that grows. Really interesting study was done on a 3 good things diary. By simply writing down 3 good things and why they're good, it raises your baseline level of happiness. This is scientifically proven to work. And when our happiness increases, we release dopamine, which turns on all the learning centers in our brain, making us more creative, energetic, and even more intelligent. It must be applicable. So the person that you're talking to, it must be applicable to them. You wouldn't, let's say, give advice or ask them about things that aren't applicable. It should be provocative. An example could be if someone tells you that they're feeling terrible, asking them more about it could bring them into a negative spiral again. And a provocative question could be, what would it take to shift your emotions to the positive? And then it must be collaborative. So all of this, we're talking about a powerful alliance between people. Appreciative inquiry is about discovery of what is, so a grounded exploration of the best of what is. It's dreaming what might be, so we're visioning and debating collaboratively, and we're articulating what might be. We're designing what should be, so we're working together to develop what might be or should be. And we're talking about destiny, what can or will be. We're collectively experimenting with what can be. Some key AI presumptions are that in every society, organization, group, or individual, something works. What people focus on becomes their reality, so we might as well focus on the positive. Reality is created in the moment, and there are multiple realities. The act of asking questions of an organization, group, or individual influences the group or individual in some way. And people are more confident and comfortable in their journey into the future, the unknown, when they carry forward parts of the past, the known. And if people carry parts of the past forward, these parts should be what is best about the past. So now I'll talk about the difference between the problem-solving approach, which we're all used to, and the appreciative inquiry approach. With problem solving, you're identifying what the problem is, you're analyzing what are the causes of the problem, you're generating and you're agreeing what solutions might be possible, and you're talking about implementation of the best solution. So the person here or the organization becomes a problem to solve. Whereas with appreciative inquiry technique, you're discovering what is working well, you're imagining or dreaming how good it would be, you're designing or agreeing on how good it should be, and you're creating your destiny, you're committing to what it will be. So the person here becomes a change waiting to happen. So we'll talk now about a comparison of appreciative questions to problem-solving questions. With problem-solving questions, you're asking things like, tell me what the problem is, tell me what's wrong, what are you worried about, what do you need help with, what's bothering you, what isn't working, what are you going to do about, how are you going to fix this, and what do you think caused this to happen? So here you see we're talking about problems, the past, the negative causes, and fixing. And with appreciative questions, you're asking things like, what gives you energy? Here we find out a lot about a person. We find out maybe when they're using their strengths or when they're honoring their values, what's the most important things for them to honor? What do you most value about yourself? What a powerful thing to know about yourself and to acknowledge. What do you want more of? And then we can help them to get there. This is an energizing thing to think about. What worked well for you before? So you can use that again and they feel like they're in control. They've done this before. What's working well now? Sometimes we don't acknowledge this. What first attracted you to X? What did you do to contribute? Sometimes we don't acknowledge that either. What does it look like when we talk about something that you're successful at? And then, how do you want to keep moving forward for yourself? So you see here, we're talking about what gives you energy, strengths, the future, the positive. So there's a completely different energy here and focus. So now we'll talk about feedback and feed forward. For giving feedback, we want to be genuine and sincere. We need to be timely and to give feedback as soon as possible. We need to be constructive and encouraging if it's negative. We need to question rather than to make critical judgments. We don't dwell on points and don't try to cover too many points at the same time. We need to be empathetic with the recipient. And we focus on behavior, not the individual. And we want to be positive as much as we can. It takes at least 3 positive comments to every 1 constructive to have a healthy team. And that's just to have a healthy team. If we increase that to 6 to 1, we increase productivity by up to 40%. It must be specific and provide evidence. For example, observed behavior. So now we'll talk about the BOOST model that identifies properties of effective feedback. And the BOOST stands for balanced, objective, observed, specific, and timely. With balanced, if you need to give negative feedback, also give positive and also give encouragement. So you can do something like the sandwich effect where you give positive, then constructive, then positive again and encouragement. But this is just if you need to give negative feedback. You can give positive feedback on its own, and that's even recommended, because if you give positive and then give a negative, that's what people will focus on, generally the negative. Objective. It looks at the actions and behaviors of someone rather than their personality. Unless, of course, it's positive again, you could say someone has a great attitude. Observed. It relates to first-hand observations, not just reports from others. So it must be evidence-based and genuine. Specific. There are clear details to the feedback rather than vague statements. For example, if someone hands you a report, you can tell them that it met the objectives of X and Y, and it was concise and clear. Timely. The person receiving the feedback is told at the first opportunity. So don't dwell on things, don't build them up, and don't lose the opportunity. And things we want to avoid: following praise with criticism unnecessarily, ending an expression of praise with "now get back to work," and being too gushing. We want it to be sincere. Now we'll talk about the BOF model for effective feedback. This provides a framework that you can bring someone through to structure your feedback. BOF stands for behavior, outcome, feelings, and future. So you can start with describing the instance or pattern of behavior that you have observed. For example, I see that you're providing support to your team members. Then outcome, explain the result of such behavior on others or self. Example, it increases productivity when you do. Feelings, express your feelings about the behavior. For example, and it also boosts morale. Future, the last step is to talk about the impact of the behavior on the future. For example, your behavior is pivotal in ensuring that we will reach our targets this quarter. Keep up the good work. And on this step, if you need to use this model for constructive feedback, you can talk about what positive change they can make for the future here. Which brings us nicely to the idea of feed forward. Now with feedback, you're talking about the past and oftentimes what's negative about the past and what they need to improve upon, which sometimes can lead people to be defensive. But with feed forward, you're talking about the future and what can be done that's positive in the future. So by talking about this, you're overcoming the negative of the past anyway, and you're also providing solutions or a positive future. Also, when we focus on the positive, it evokes positive emotions and facilitates empowerment. It leads to the discovery of critical data and brings to the foreground data that are forgotten or outside of the discourse. And it identifies keys for optimal functioning. It addresses deep needs. It fosters communication and interpersonal contact, because people are far more likely to build relationships when they're talking about the positive than the negative past. Creates opportunities to recognize abilities and talents of the other, and allows personal growth via discovery of one's strengths and virtues. And it creates an atmosphere that enables a more open consideration feedback. And that brings us nicely to the end. So just to recap, we've spoken about the amazing benefits of recognition. We've spoken about appreciative inquiry technique. We've introduced a BOOST model that identifies the properties of effective feedback. We've spoken about the BOF model, or the BOF framework for providing effective feedback. And we've introduced using feed forward in your questioning and your dialogue. Thank you.